On screen, battleships burning in the harbor, black smoke rising, alarms blaring, soldiers scrambling in chaos. The date December 7th, 1941 flashes across the screen. Narrator: December 7th, 1941. A day of infamy. A date etched into the annals of history, forever synonymous with surprise attack and national resolve. But behind the shock and devastation, a haunting, persistent question lingers. Did America truly not see the attack on Pearl Harbor coming? Was it an unavoidable tragedy or a catastrophic failure of intelligence and foresight? The early 1940s saw a world teetering on the brink. Europe was engulfed in war, and Imperial Japan, driven by expansionist ambitions, cast a long shadow across Asia. Its quest for resources and regional dominance put it on a collision course with the United States. American foreign policy, though officially neutral, increasingly favored the Allied cause. Economic sanctions, particularly an oil embargo, were imposed on Japan. These measures were intended to curb Japanese aggression, but they also pushed Tokyo towards desperate measures. Japan viewed the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor as the primary obstacle to its expansion. The fleet's presence in Hawaii represented a formidable deterrent. Eliminating this threat was deemed essential for Japan's strategic objectives in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of Japan's combined fleet, was the mastermind behind the Pearl Harbor attack. He had studied in the U.S. and understood American industrial might. Yamamoto knew a prolonged war with America was unwinnable for Japan. His audacious plan, Operation Z, aimed for a swift, decisive blow. It sought to cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet, buying Japan crucial time to consolidate its gains in Southeast Asia. This would establish an impregnable defensive perimeter before America could fully mobilize. In the months leading up to December 1941, Japan executed its preparations with absolute secrecy. Naval exercises were conducted under strict radio silence. False communications were deliberately broadcast to mislead Allied intelligence. The strike force, comprising 6 aircraft carriers and numerous support vessels, sailed silently across the vast Pacific. It maintained radio silence throughout its journey, avoiding detection. This operational security was paramount to the success of the surprise attack. Pearl Harbor was chosen for its strategic importance and perceived vulnerability. While heavily defended, its defenses were geared towards sabotage and submarine attacks, not a full-scale aerial assault. The concentration of the U.S. fleet made it an irresistible target. Japanese intelligence meticulously gathered information on the harbor's layout and ship movements. Spies, including Takeo Yoshikawa, provided crucial details. These insights allowed for precise planning of attack waves and target assignments. American intelligence had achieved a remarkable feat, breaking Japan's diplomatic code known as Purple. The intercepted messages, codenamed Magic, provided an unprecedented window into Japanese intentions. These decrypts revealed Japan's growing frustration and aggressive posture. However, Magic intercepts primarily focused on diplomatic communications. They offered insights into political maneuvering, but rarely contained explicit military operational plans. This distinction proved critical in the interpretation of the intelligence. On November 27, 1941, a war warning message was sent from Washington to all U.S. Pacific commands. It stated that hostile action is possible at any moment. This warning explicitly mentioned the Philippines, Malaya, and Thailand as potential targets. Crucially, the warning did not specifically highlight Pearl Harbor or Hawaii as a primary threat. It advised commanders to take appropriate defensive deployment. However, the interpretation of defensive deployment varied widely among commanders. On the morning of December 7, 1941, 2 U.S. Army privates operating a radar station at Opana Point detected a large formation of aircraft approaching Hawaii. This was the first wave of Japanese attackers, still miles away. The report was relayed to a junior officer, Lieutenant Kermit Tyler. He dismissed the sighting, believing it to be a flight of American B-17 bombers expected from the mainland. This critical misidentification allowed the Japanese planes to proceed unhindered. Hours before the aerial attack, a U.S. destroyer, the USS Ward, detected and sank a Japanese midget submarine attempting to enter Pearl Harbor. This was a clear act of aggression, a direct precursor to war. The report of the submarine sinking was sent up the chain of command. However, it was not acted upon with the urgency it demanded. The significance of this event was not fully grasped until after the main attack. On December 6th, President Roosevelt received the first 13 parts of a 14-part Japanese diplomatic message. It was a clear rejection of American peace proposals. The final part, delivered on December 7th, effectively severed diplomatic relations. This message, combined with instructions to destroy code machines, strongly indicated an imminent break in relations and likely military action. However, the exact target and timing remained ambiguous to American leaders. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, and Lieutenant General Walter C. Short, Commander of the Army's Hawaiian Department, were the top commanders in Hawaii. They were responsible for the defense of Pearl Harbor. Both commanders had received the war warning, but interpreted it differently. Short focused on sabotage, grouping aircraft together for easier guarding. Kimmel believed the primary threat was from submarines, not an air attack. Despite the intelligence, Hawaii was not considered the most likely target for a major Japanese offensive. The Philippines, with its strategic location and American airfields, seemed a more logical first strike. This geographical bias influenced defensive preparations. The prevailing belief was that Japan would not dare to attack the heavily fortified Pearl Harbor directly. This underestimation of Japanese audacity proved to be a fatal miscalculation. American intelligence agencies were fragmented and often failed to share information effectively. The Army and Navy intelligence branches operated largely independently. This created silos, preventing a comprehensive picture from emerging. Furthermore, the sheer volume of intercepted messages and intelligence reports led to information overload. Critical pieces of information could easily be overlooked or misinterpreted amidst the noise. This perspective suggests that U.S. leaders, including President Franklin D. Roosevelt, possessed significant foreknowledge of the impending attack. Proponents argue that the attack was allowed to happen to galvanize public opinion and overcome isolationist sentiment. The argument posits that Roosevelt needed a direct, undeniable act of aggression to bring a reluctant America into World War II. Pearl Harbor, in this view, served as the perfect catalyst. Those who subscribe to the foreknowledge theory point to several pieces of circumstantial evidence. These include the war warning messages, the radar sighting, and the submarine attack. They argue that these signals, when combined, should have triggered a higher state of alert. They also highlight the fact that the U.S. aircraft carriers, the most valuable assets, were not in Pearl Harbor on December 7th. This is sometimes interpreted as a deliberate move to protect them from destruction. A more extreme version of the foreknowledge hypothesis suggests a deliberate conspiracy. This theory posits that high-ranking officials actively suppressed intelligence or manipulated events to ensure the attack occurred. However, this theory lacks credible, direct evidence. No definitive documents or testimonies have ever emerged to substantiate claims of a deliberate conspiracy to allow the attack. Most mainstream historians, after decades of rigorous research and declassified documents, largely reject the conspiracy theories. They argue that Pearl Harbor was primarily a catastrophic failure of communication, intelligence analysis, and readiness. This consensus emphasizes the complexity of intelligence gathering and interpretation during wartime. It highlights human error, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and the inherent difficulty of predicting an enemy's exact intentions and capabilities. The historical consensus points to a perfect storm of factors. These include the brilliance of Japanese operational security, the underestimation of Japanese capabilities, the fragmentation of U.S. intelligence, and the misinterpretation of ambiguous warnings. The lack of a unified command structure and the absence of a clear, overarching threat assessment contributed significantly to the disaster. Commanders on the ground were left to interpret vague warnings with limited context. In just under 2 hours, the Japanese attack inflicted catastrophic damage. Over 2,400 Americans were killed, and nearly 200 were wounded. 8 battleships were sunk or damaged, along with numerous other vessels. Over 180 aircraft were destroyed. The U.S. Pacific Fleet was indeed crippled, just as Yamamoto had intended. The immediate psychological impact on the American public was profound, shifting national sentiment overnight. What Japan intended as a crippling blow instead awakened what President Roosevelt famously called a sleeping giant. The attack unified a previously divided American public. Isolationist sentiment evaporated almost instantly. On December 8, 1941, the United States formally declared war on Japan. This marked America's full entry into World War II, fundamentally changing the course of the global conflict. The attack had far-reaching consequences. It led to a massive mobilization of American industry and manpower. The U.S. transformed into the arsenal of democracy, producing vast quantities of war materials. The strategic implications were immense. The U.S. shifted its focus from a defensive posture to an offensive one in the Pacific. The war in the Pacific would be long and brutal, culminating in Japan's unconditional surrender in 1945. Pearl Harbor remains a pivotal moment in American history. It serves as a stark reminder of the costs of unpreparedness and the complexities of intelligence. The debate over foreknowledge continues to captivate historians and enthusiasts alike. While the consensus points to a failure of intelligence and command, the lingering questions ensure that the events of December 7, 1941, will continue to be scrutinized. The search for absolute truth in such a complex historical event is an ongoing endeavor. Pearl Harbor was both a profound tragedy and an undeniable turning point. It propelled America into a global conflict that reshaped the 20th century. But the question endures: was it truly an unavoidable surprise, or a catastrophe that, with different decisions and better communication, could have been foreseen and mitigated? The debate continues to this day, a testament to the enduring power of history's unanswered questions. This is the Scholar's Ledger, where history, faith, and power are revealed. Subscribe, share, and join the search for truth.